My name is Bethany Fox. I'm 39 years old and have served in the military for nearly 2 decades. That evening, I returned to Chattanooga for a family dinner, thinking that after all these years apart, I'd be welcomed home, like family. But the moment I stepped into the room, my sister's voice cut through cold and sharp. "She's just some low-rank grunt," she scoffed, shoving a tray into my hands like I was the help. The room erupted in laughter, cousins, family, friends, all smirking like I didn't belong. My face burned, but I stood tall, gripping that tray. They had no idea how far I'd come to stand here today. And they definitely didn't know what I was holding back. My father's legacy, a secret worth millions, was in my hands. Then my sister's fiancé took the mic. He turned to me, gave a formal salute, and said something. Just one sentence. The entire room fell silent. The laughter vanished. Every eye in that room shifted toward me, not with ridicule this time, but with confusion and shock. And my sister's smug little smile, gone. But before I tell you exactly what happened that night, tell me, where are you watching from? I always wonder who's out there listening and whether you've ever felt what I felt that night. Drop a comment below and join me as we uncover the truths no one dares to speak at the dinner table. I pulled up to the sprawling mansion on Lookout Mountain, my heart heavy with a mix of hope and dread. This was home, or at least it used to be. I hadn't been back in years, not since I chose the army over the family's fashion empire. The front door swung open and my mother stood there, her posture rigid, her designer dress screaming wealth. "You're late," she snapped, her eyes scanning me like I was a recruit who'd failed inspection. "We need extra hands for the dinner tonight. You can start by setting the tables." I stepped inside, the familiar scent of polished wood hitting me, but something was off. The framed photo of my West Point graduation, the one Dad had hung with pride, was gone. In its place was a portrait of my mother and sister, their smiles smug like they'd erased me from the family. My sister sauntered in her heels, clicking on the marble floor. "Still playing soldier," she said, her voice dripping with mockery. She tossed me a stack of napkins. "Make yourself useful for once." I bit my tongue, the sting of her words sharper than I'd expected. Growing up, she'd always been the golden child, running the marketing for the family's fashion line, basking in mother's approval. I was the odd one out, the one who'd traded designer dresses for combat boots. But I wasn't here to fight, not yet. I folded the napkins, my hands steady, my mind racing. They thought they knew me, a washed-up soldier with no place in their world. They had no idea what I'd become, or what I knew about Dad's legacy. Mother walked by, her phone pressed to her ear, barking orders about the dinner. "Make sure the guests know we hit 10 million in revenue this quarter," she said, not even glancing at me. I caught her eye for a moment, hoping for a flicker of warmth, but she turned away, her expression cold as stone. I remembered Dad's voice, his stories of honor and sacrifice, the way he'd believed in me when no one else did. That memory kept me grounded even as their dismissal cut deep. My sister circled back, her eyes narrowing. "Don't embarrass us tonight," she said, her tone sharp. "This dinner is for important people. Investors, media, not your kind." She smirked, adjusting her diamond bracelet. I wanted to snap back, to tell her I'd led missions in war zones, that I wasn't the nobody she thought. But I held back. I'd learned long ago that words didn't win battles, actions did. And I had a plan, one they wouldn't see coming. As I set the tables, I noticed a stack of documents on the sideboard, half hidden under a vase. The top page had Dad's name on it, something about a trust fund. My pulse quickened. I'd heard whispers about his estate money he'd set aside before he passed, but Mother always claimed it was tied up in the business. I didn't touch the papers, not yet, but I knew they held answers. Answers I'd need before this night was over. The guests started arriving, their laughter echoing through the house. I moved through the crowd, invisible in my plain slacks and blouse, carrying trays as instructed. Every smile, every glance from the guests felt like a judgment. They saw what my family wanted them to see, a failure, a nobody. But I wasn't here to play their game. I was here for Dad, for the truth he'd left behind. And when the moment came, I'd make sure they all knew exactly who I was. That night, I couldn't sleep. The sting of my sister's words and my mother's cold dismissal churned in my mind, mixing with the image of those papers on the sideboard, Dad's name in bold print. I grabbed my keys and slipped out of the guest room, the mansion's silence heavy around me. I needed air, a place to think. I drove through the dark streets of Chattanooga, the city lights fading as I climbed toward Signal Point. It was a quiet spot overlooking the Tennessee River where Dad used to bring me when I was a kid. Back then, we'd sit on the benches, just the two of us, talking about life, honor, and what it meant to stand tall. I parked and stepped out, the cool night air brushing my skin. The stars were sharp above, and for a moment I could almost hear Dad's voice again. He was a colonel, a man who'd seen war and carried its weight, but he never let it dim his fire. Bethany, he'd said once, his eyes steady, the world's full of noise, people shouting, demanding, tearing each other down. But it's the small, steady flames that light the way. Be that flame. I was maybe 12 then, too young to fully grasp it, but those words stuck like a compass in my heart. I walked to the overlook, my boots crunching on the gravel path. Signal Point was where Dad taught me to dream big, to see beyond the glitz of my mother's world. He'd tell stories of his army days, not the battles, but the quiet moments, soldiers sharing coffee under a desert sky or helping a village rebuild after a storm. It's not about glory, he'd say. It's about doing what's right, even when no one's watching. I leaned against the railing, staring at the river below, its current steady despite the darkness. That was Dad, steady, unshakable, even when my mother and sister mocked his values, calling them old-fashioned. I thought about the last time we sat here, just before I left for West Point. He'd been sick, his face thinner, but his grip on my hand was strong. "You're choosing a hard path, kid," he said. "Not everyone will understand, especially your mother and sister. They'll try to pull you down, but you've got fire in you. Don't let them snuff it out." I'd promised him I wouldn't. A week later, he was gone, his heart giving out before I could say goodbye. The pain of that loss hit me again, sharp and raw, like it was yesterday. Those papers I'd seen in the mansion, they weren't just numbers. They were Dad's legacy, a trust fund he'd set up, money meant for something bigger than my mother's fashion empire. I didn't know the details yet, but I felt it in my gut. My sister and mother were hiding something, twisting what Dad had built to serve their own ends. The thought made my blood boil, not out of anger, but resolve. I wasn't that kid anymore, the one they could push around. I'd led teams through chaos, made choices that saved lives. I wasn't going to let them erase Dad's memory or steal what he'd left behind. I sat on a bench, the same one Dad and I used years ago. A memory flashed, him handing me his old dog tags, the metal cool in my palm. "These carried me through," he'd said. "They'll carry you too." I pulled them out of my pocket now, the tags worn but solid, a piece of him I always kept close. Running my fingers over the engraved letters, I felt a spark reignite. This wasn't just about me. It was about honoring Dad, about making sure his values lived on. My sister and mother could laugh, could call me a nobody, but they didn't know the strength I'd built, or the truth I was about to uncover. I looked out at the city below, its lights flickering like the flames Dad talked about. I wasn't here to beg for their approval. I was here to fight for what was right, to protect what Dad had entrusted to me. The dinner tomorrow would be their stage, their chance to show off. But I'd be ready. I'd make sure Dad's legacy shone brighter than their lies. As I drove back to the mansion, the dog tags heavy in my pocket, I knew one thing for sure: this was only the beginning. As I pulled back into the mansion's driveway after Signal Point, my phone buzzed with a message. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Meet me at the Daily Grind, 9 a.m. tomorrow. We need to talk about your father's trust. Corey." My heart skipped a beat. Corey Bates. My sister's fiancé was the last person I expected to hear from. I barely knew him. Just a few polite nods at family gatherings before I left for the army. Why was he reaching out now? I typed a quick reply, agreeing to meet, my mind racing with possibilities. Dad's words from last night echoed, "Be that flame." I wasn't sure what Corey wanted, but I felt a spark of hope. The next morning, I walked into the Daily Grind, a cozy coffee shop in downtown Chattanooga, its air thick with the scent of roasted beans. I spotted Corey at a corner table, his broad shoulders hunched over a laptop. He looked up, his face serious but warm, and stood to greet me. "Bethany," he said, extending a hand. "It's been a while." His grip was firm, his eyes steady like someone who'd seen hard days. I sat across from him, my guard up but curious. "I owe you," Corey said, his voice low. "You probably don't remember, but Iraq 2010. That ambush in Fallujah. I was a captain under your command. My squad was pinned down, cut off in a market square. You led the rescue, got us out when I thought we were done." I froze, the memory flooding back, gunfire, dust, my voice barking orders through the radio. I'd never forgotten that day, but I hadn't known Corey was one of the soldiers I'd pulled out. "I never got to thank you properly," he said, his jaw tight. "You saved my life." I nodded, unsure how to respond. "Just doing my job," I said, but his words hit deep. The Army had taught me to keep moving, to bury moments like that. But here was Corey bringing it back, tying us together in a way I hadn't expected. "Why now?" I asked, leaning forward. "What's this about my father's trust?" Corey glanced around, ensuring no one was listening, then slid a folder across the table. "I found something," he said. "Your sister and your mother, they're draining the trust your father set up. It's millions meant for you and your sister, but they've been siphoning it into the fashion company's accounts. I saw the bank statements, emails between them. They think you don't know or won't care." My stomach twisted. The papers I'd glimpsed last night, Dad's name on them, suddenly made sense. "How did you get this?" I asked, flipping through the folder. It held account summaries, transfer records, even an email from my sister to my mother she'll never check. "We can use it for the new line." I felt a surge of anger, but I kept my face calm, years of training kicking in. "I'm a civil engineer now," Corey said, "but I still have contacts from my Army days. One of them works in finance, caught wind of some shady transfers tied to your family's company. I dug deeper because of you. After Fallujah, I looked you up. I know what you've done. Missions, medals, lives saved. Your sister calls you a grunt, but I know better. And I know your father wouldn't have wanted this." I studied him, searching for any hint of a lie, but his eyes were clear, his voice steady. "Why risk it?" I asked. "You're engaged to my sister. Helping me could cost you everything." Corey sighed, running a hand through his hair. "She's changed," he said. "Marcia's obsessed with the company, with power. She's not the woman I proposed to. And I can't stand by while they steal what your father built. He was a soldier like us. He deserves better." I leaned back, the weight of his words settling in. Dad's trust wasn't just money, it was his legacy, his belief in doing what's right. Corey was offering me a way to fight for it, but it meant going against my family. "What's your plan?" I asked, my voice steady, despite the storm inside. "We hit them where it hurts," Corey said. "The dinner tomorrow, they're flaunting their success to investors. We can use that stage. I've got more evidence, digital copies, transaction logs. We show the guests the truth. Let them see what your sister and mother are doing." His eyes met mine, a soldier's resolve mirrored in them. "But it's your call, Bethany. You're the one they've underestimated." I closed the folder, my fingers tracing the edge. Dad's dog tag still in my pocket felt heavier now. "I'm in," I said. "For Dad." Corey nodded, a faint smile breaking through. For the first time since I'd come home, I wasn't alone in this fight. Marcia texted me the next day, her message dripping with fake warmth. "Dinner tonight. Just us sisters. 7 p.m. at the St. John's. Let's catch up." I stared at the screen, my gut telling me this wasn't about bonding. After Corey's bombshell about the trust fund, I knew my sister was playing a game. I agreed to meet, slipping my phone into my pocket, the weight of Dad's dog tags grounding me. This was my chance to see how far Marcia would go. I arrived at the St. John's, a sleek restaurant in downtown Chattanooga, its dim lights and polished tables screaming wealth. Marcia was already there, perched at a corner booth, her red dress sharp against the white tablecloth. She waved me over with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Bethany, you made it," she said, her voice syrupy. "Sit." I ordered us wine. I slid into the booth, my posture stiff, my instincts on high alert. The waiter poured the wine and Marcia raised her glass. "To family," she said, her tone almost convincing. I clinked my glass against hers, but I didn't drink. "It's been too long," she continued, leaning back. "I know we've had our differences, but I want to fix that. You're my sister after all." Her words sounded rehearsed, like lines from one of her marketing pitches. I nodded, letting her talk, waiting for the real reason we were here. She didn't waste time. Halfway through the appetizers, Marcia pulled a folder from her purse and slid it across the table. "I've been thinking about Dad's estate," she said, her voice casual, like we were discussing the weather. "It's complicated, tied up in the company. Mother and I have been managing it, but it's a mess. If you sign this, it'll simplify things for all of us." I opened the folder, my eyes scanning the document. It was a waiver relinquishing my claim to Dad's trust fund. My heart pounded, but I kept my face neutral. "Why now?" I asked, my voice steady. Marcia's smile tightened. "It's just business," she said. "The company needs liquidity for our new line. You don't care about fashion, Bethany. You've got your army thing. This is for the family legacy." Her words were smooth, but I caught the edge in them, the same disdain she'd shown at the mansion. I thought of Corey's folder, bank statements, emails proving she and my mother were siphoning Dad's money. This wasn't about legacy. It was theft. I leaned forward, my eyes locked on hers. "Marcia, what exactly is in this trust?" I asked, keeping my tone light but probing. Her fingers twitched around her wine glass. "Just some funds Dad set aside," she said, waving a hand. "Nothing you'd need. You're doing fine, right?" She laughed, but it was brittle, like glass about to crack. I saw my chance. I slipped my phone from my pocket, discreetly tapping the record button under the table. "So you're saying I should give up my share to help the company?" I pressed. Marcia took the bait. "Exactly," she said, her voice lowering. "Look, Bethany, you're not part of this world. Mother and I have built something huge. That money's better off with us. You'd just waste it." Her words cut, but I didn't flinch. I kept her talking, asking about the trust's details, her answers growing sloppier with each sip of wine. "It's already being used," she admitted, her guard slipping. "The new collection's funded. You don't need to know more. Just sign." I closed the folder, sliding it back to her. "I'm not signing, Marcia," I said, my voice cold. Her smile vanished, her eyes narrowing. "You're making a mistake," she hissed. "This is for the family. Don't be selfish." I stood my chair, scraping the floor. "Selfish?" I said, my voice low but firm. "Dad's legacy isn't your personal bank account." Her face paled, and for a moment I saw panic flicker in her eyes. She knew I was onto her. I left the restaurant, my heart racing but my resolve stronger than ever. The recording on my phone was Gold, Marcia's own words, admitting to using the trust for her own gain. Combined with Corey's evidence, it was enough to expose her and my mother at the dinner tomorrow. I thought of Dad, his steady voice urging me to be the flame. This was it, the moment to fight for what was right. Marcia thought she'd outsmarted me, but she just handed me the weapon I needed. The real battle was coming, and I was ready. The next morning, I met Corey at a small office he'd rented on the edge of Chattanooga, a nondescript space with a desk, a laptop, and stacks of papers. My heart was still racing from Marcia's dinner, her smug words, "just sign," echoing in my head. But now, with her voice recorded and Corey's evidence in hand, I felt the tide turning. We had one day until the big family dinner, and we needed to be ready. Dad's dog tags tucked in my pocket reminded me what was at stake. This wasn't just about money, it was about honoring his legacy. Corey was already at work, his laptop open to a spreadsheet of bank transactions. "I've been digging deeper," he said, pushing a stack of documents toward me. These are the transfers your sister and mother moved over $2 million from your father's trust to the company's accounts. I've got emails too, ones they didn't bother to encrypt. They're careless, Bethany. They think you're out of the picture. I flipped through the papers, my eyes catching dates and numbers. One email from Marcia to my mother stood out. She's clueless. The trust is ours now. My jaw tightened. Clueless, I'd spent years leading soldiers through chaos, making split-second decisions under fire. Marcia's arrogance was her weakness, and we were about to exploit it. How solid is this? I asked Corey, tapping the stack. Rock solid, he said, his voice steady. My finance contact cross-checked every transaction. I've also got digital backups on a secure drive. We can project these at the dinner show, the guests, the investors, the media. They'll see the truth. His eyes met mine, a spark of the same resolve we'd shared in Iraq. I nodded. Good. Let's make it undeniable. Corey pulled up a draft of our plan on his laptop. We'll need a projector at the restaurant, he said. I've already talked to the manager at the St. John's. He's discreet, owes me a favor. We load the evidence onto a USB drive, play it during your speech. Timing's everything. We hit when Marcia and your mother are at their peak, basking in the applause. I could picture it, the room full of Chattanooga's elite, Marcia's smug smile, my mother's polished speech, then our evidence shattering their facade. I leaned back, thinking through the logistics. We need more than financials, I said. They'll try to spin it, say it's a misunderstanding. I want them to know who they're dealing with. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in months. General Thompson, a mentor from my early Army days. He picked up on the second ring. Bethany, he said, his voice warm but gruff. What's this about, sir? I need a favor, I said, keeping my tone professional. I'm facing a personal situation. I need my service record, the full version, missions, commendations, everything. Can you get it to me by tomorrow? Thompson didn't hesitate. You've earned it, kid. I'll have it sent to your email by tonight. I thanked him, hanging up with a surge of confidence. My record years of leading troops, saving lives, earning medals would show Marcia and my mother I wasn't the grunt they thought. Back at my hotel room, I pulled my dress uniform from its case. The dark blue fabric, crisp and heavy with insignia, felt like armor. I hadn't worn it since my last promotion ceremony, but tomorrow it would be my statement. Marcia and my mother wanted to erase me, to reduce me to a nobody. This uniform with its rows of ribbons and stars would remind them and everyone else who I was. I laid it out carefully, my fingers brushing the silver oak leaves on the shoulders. Dad would have been proud. Corey called later, confirming the USB drive was ready. I've formatted the evidence into a slideshow, he said. Bank records, emails, even a clip of your sister's voice from your recording. It's tight, professional, no room for them to wiggle out. I smiled, picturing Marcia's face when the truth hit. You're sure about this, Corey? I asked. You're risking a lot. He paused, then said, I'm sure. Your father's trust deserves better. And so do you. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed, the dog tags in my hand. I thought of Dad, his steady voice urging me to be the flame. Tomorrow at the St. John's, we'd light a fire they couldn't put out. Marcia and my mother thought they'd won, but they'd underestimated me and Corey. The dinner was their stage, but it would be our battleground. I walked into the St. John's, the same upscale restaurant where Marcia had tried to trick me 2 nights ago. Tonight, the place was transformed, tables draped in white linen chandeliers casting a warm glow, and a crowd of Chattanooga's elite buzzing with anticipation. My dress uniform felt like a second skin, the silver oak leaves on my shoulders gleaming under the lights. Dad's dog tags tucked in my pocket gave me strength. This was the moment Corey and I had planned for, the moment to set things right. I stayed in the shadows near the entrance, watching the room. My mother, Pearl, stood at the head table, her designer gown impeccable, her voice commanding as she welcomed the guests. Tonight, we celebrate the Fox family legacy, she said, raising a glass. Our fashion empire has reached new heights, and we're just getting started. The crowd clapped, investors and media nodding along. Marcia next to her beamed, her red lipstick sharp as ever. Then Marcia took the microphone, her eyes scanning the room until they landed on me. Her smile twisted into something cruel. "Before we continue," she said, her voice dripping with mockery, "I'd like to acknowledge my sister Bethany. She's been away playing soldier. I'm sure you've seen her tonight serving drinks like the low-rank grunt she is." Laughter rippled through the crowd, sharp and cutting. My cheeks burned, but I stood still, gripping the USB drive Corey had prepared. They thought they knew me. They were wrong. Pearl chimed in, her tone icy. "Let's focus on the future," she said, dismissing me with a wave. "Our new collection will redefine luxury." The guests clapped again, but I caught a few uneasy glances. They didn't know the truth, not yet. I gave Corey a subtle nod from across the room. He was near the projector, ready to execute our plan. My heart pounded, but years of leading under pressure kept me steady. This was my battlefield now. I stepped forward, my boots clicking on the polished floor. The room's chatter faded as eyes turned to me. My uniform, crisp and authoritative, silenced the whispers. Marcia's jaw tightened, her eyes narrowing. "What's this?" she muttered loud enough for the mic to catch. I stopped at the center of the room, standing tall. "I'm not here to serve drinks," I said, my voice clear and firm. "I'm here to honor my father's legacy, the real one." Corey moved to the stage, his posture rigid like the soldier he'd once been. He saluted me, sharp and precise, and took the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice booming, "allow me to introduce Major General Bethany Fox." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Marcia's face went pale, her wine glass trembling in her hand. Pearl froze, her polished mask cracking. Corey continued undeterred. "General Fox has led missions across the globe, saved countless lives, and earned commendations most only dream of. She's not a grunt, she's a leader." The projector flickered to life behind him, displaying my service record, missions in Iraq, Afghanistan, medals for valor, years of sacrifice. The crowd murmured, some leaning forward, others whispering in shock. I caught an investor's eye, his brow furrowed as he read the screen. Corey didn't stop. "But tonight isn't just about her service," he said. "It's about truth." He clicked the remote and the screen changed to bank statements, emails, Marcia's own words, admitting to siphoning Dad's trust. A clip of her voice from my recording played. "She's clueless. The trust is ours now." The room fell silent, the air thick with tension. Marcia stood, her voice shrill. "This is a lie," she shouted, but the evidence was undeniable. Pearl gripped the table, her face ashen. Guests exchanged looks, some pulling out phones, others whispering to their neighbors. I stepped closer to the stage, my eyes locked on Marcia. "You thought you could erase Dad's legacy?" I said, my voice low but carrying. "You thought you could erase me, but Dad taught me to stand for what's right. This trust was his gift to us, not your personal piggy bank." Corey handed me the microphone, his nod steady. I faced the crowd, my heart steady now. "My father believed in honor, in building something that lasts. I'm here to protect that. This dinner was meant to celebrate a legacy, let's make it his." The room erupted in applause, not for Marcia or Pearl, but for the truth. Marcia sank into her chair, her face a mask of fury and defeat. Pearl stared at me, her eyes cold but powerless. I'd won this battle not with anger but with the flame Dad had told me to carry. The applause from my speech still echoed in the St. John's as I stepped back, letting Corey take the stage again. The room filled with Chattanooga's elite investors, media, and business partners watched intently, their earlier shock at my uniform and title lingering. My mother Pearl gripped her wine glass, her face a mask of barely concealed panic. Marcia beside her shot me a venomous glare, but I stood tall, my dress uniform steadying me. Dad's dog tags in my pocket felt like a quiet promise. This was it, the moment to burn away their lies. Corey clicked the remote, and the projector screen flared to life. "There's more to the Fox family legacy," he said, his voice calm but cutting. Not the one you've been sold tonight, but the truth. The screen displayed a video pieced together from the evidence we'd gathered. Bank statements scrolled by showing millions siphoned from Dad's trust into the fashion company's accounts. Emails flashed up Marcia's words to my mother. She's clueless. The trust is ours now. Then my recording from the dinner with Marcia played, her voice clear. You just waste it. The trust is better off with us. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A reporter in the front row scribbled furiously, her eyes wide. An investor leaned forward, his brow furrowed as he read the numbers. Marcia lurched to her feet, her voice shrill. This is a setup, she shouted, pointing at Corey. He's lying. That's not me. But the video didn't stop. Another email appeared, this one from Pearl. Keep her out of it. She doesn't deserve a cent. The room buzzed with whispers, phones raised to capture the screen. Pearl grabbed the microphone from the table, her hands shaking. This is a misunderstanding, she said, her voice strained. These are private matters, not for public display, but her words drowned in the growing murmurs. A business partner, a gray-haired man in a suit, stood up, his face hard. Is this true? He demanded, looking at Pearl. She stammered, her polished facade crumbling. Marcia tried to cut in, her voice rising. You can't trust her, she spat, pointing at me. She's just jealous and nobody trying to ruin us. I stepped forward, my boots echoing on the hardwood floor. A nobody, I said, my voice steady, cutting through the noise. I'm Major General Bethany Fox, and I've spent my life fighting for what's right. My father's trust was meant for his daughters, not your empire. I turned to the crowd, my gaze unwavering. You've seen the evidence. They've stolen from his legacy, from me, from you. The room fell silent, the weight of the truth settling in. A reporter raised her hand, already asking for a statement. Another guest, an older woman, shook her head in disgust. Marcia's face twisted with fury, but her words faltered. Pearl sank into her chair, her hands covering her face. Corey stepped beside me, his presence solid. The truth doesn't lie, he said, addressing the crowd. These documents are verified. The trust was Floyd Fox's gift, and they've betrayed it. The projector looped the video, Marcia's voice echoing again, damning her with every word. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, some guests standing, others turning to their neighbors in disbelief. I felt a surge of calm, the kind that comes after a long fight. Dad's words be the flame burned in my chest. I didn't need to shout or plead. The evidence spoke for itself, and the room saw Marcia and Pearl for what they were. A reporter approached, her recorder out. General Fox, what's next? She asked. I looked at her, then at the crowd, their eyes on me, not as a grunt, but as a leader. Justice, I said simply. For my father. I turned and walked out of the St. John's, my head high, the clink of my metals soft against my uniform. Marcia's voice calling after me faded into the noise of the crowd. I didn't look back. The cool night air hit my face as I stepped outside, the stars above Chattanooga bright and steady. Dad's legacy was safe now, and I'd honored it. Whatever came next, lawsuits, headlines, or apologies, I'd face it as I always had, with strength, with truth, and with the flame he'd taught me to carry. Days after the dinner at the St. John's, Chattanooga was abuzz with headlines. Fox fashion empire, rocked by embezzlement scandal. One newspaper blared. Another ran a photo of Marcia, her face contorted in fury, with the caption, "Family betrayal exposed at gala." My sister and my mother, Pearl, had become pariahs overnight. Investors pulled out, their once lauded fashion company teetering on the edge of collapse. Social media was relentless, clips of Corey's video, my recorded words from Marcia's dinner spread like wildfire. The truth I'd fought for was out, and it had torn their carefully crafted world apart. I sat in my hotel room, scrolling through the news on my phone. The weight of Dad's dog tags in my pocket grounded me, a reminder of why I'd done this. It wasn't about tearing Marcia and Pearl down. It was about protecting what Dad had built, what he believed in. But the cost was real. My phone buzzed with messages from distant relatives, some supportive, others accusing me of airing family secrets. Marcia hadn't called, and neither had Pearl. Their silence spoke louder than any apology could. I knew then that our family, fractured as it was beyond repair. I met Corey for coffee a week later at a quiet diner outside town. He looked tired but resolute, his laptop open to a legal document. "The trust is secure," he said, sliding a folder toward me. "Your father's assets are back where they belong, under your control. Marcia and Pearl can't touch them now." I nodded, flipping through the papers. The numbers were staggering, millions Dad had set aside for me and Marcia, now safe from their grasp. "What about you?" I asked, my voice soft. "You've lost her." Corey leaned back, his jaw tight. "Marcia made her choice long before this," he said. "I proposed to someone I thought shared my values. I was wrong. Helping you was the right thing for your father, for justice." His words echoed Dad's lessons, the ones I'd carried through every mission. I thanked him, my heart heavy but grateful. Corey had risked everything, and I'd never forget it. Back at my hotel, I made a decision. Dad's trust wasn't just money, it was his belief in doing good, in standing tall. I couldn't let it sit in a bank gathering dust. I contacted a lawyer and set up the Floyd Fox Veterans Fund, an organization to support former soldiers' education, healthcare, a lifeline for those who'd served. The trust's millions would fund scholarships, mental health programs, and job training. It felt right, like a piece of Dad was still here, helping others the way he always had. Months later, I received a letter, handwritten on simple stationery. It was from Willow Dean, a college freshman in Nashville. "Dear General Fox," it began. "I'm a Marine's daughter. Your fund paid for my tuition when my family couldn't. I'm studying nursing to give back just like you. Thank you for believing in people like me." I read it twice, my eyes stinging. Willow's words were proof that Dad's legacy lived on, not in wealth or fame, but in lives changed. I tucked the letter into my wallet next to Dad's dog tags. It was a reminder of why I'd fought, not for glory, but for impact. I thought back to the years I'd spent proving myself, first to my family, then to the world. Marcia's taunts, low-rank grunt, had stung because they echoed my own doubts. But standing in that dining room, my uniform gleaming, I'd silenced those doubts. My worth wasn't tied to their approval or their lies. It was in the choices I'd made, leading soldiers through danger, saving lives, honoring Dad's memory. I'd walked a path they'd never understand, and that was enough. Looking back, I realized the real battle wasn't just against Marcia and Pearl. It was against the voices, inside and out, that tried to dim my light. Dad had taught me to be a flame, to burn bright no matter the cost. And I had. I'd face their mockery, their betrayal, and come out stronger. My story wasn't about tearing others down. It was about standing up, about choosing what's right over what's easy. To everyone listening, I want to share what I've learned. Your worth lies in the path you choose, not your family's approval. Don't let anyone dim your light. Whether it's a sister, a parent, or your own fears, you have the power to rise above. Live for what matters to you, for the legacy you want to leave. For me, that's Dad's fund, Willow's future, and every veteran who'll find hope because of it. Thank you for hearing my story. It's been a journey, and I'm grateful to share it with you. If this resonated, hit that subscribe button. It means the world to keep this conversation going. Drop a comment below. What's a moment when you stood up for your truth? I'd love to hear it. Until next time, keep your light burning bright.